When I got off the plane, it was snowing lightly. Early winter, and the chill bit right through my coat and down to my bones. I scanned the arrival's exit, half expecting to see Emily's familiar figure waiting with a cup of coffee and that usual half-smile of hers. But no. The cold hit harder when I realized the only thing waiting was silence. I hadn't been able to reach her since 2 nights ago. No calls returned, no texts answered. I'd even tried her office number and her backup email. Nothing. And then, the moment that truly crushed me after dozens of tries, my phone rang back once only to be met with a mechanical voice. The number you are trying to reach is currently in another call. That voice haunted me. Not because it was unfamiliar, but because I knew exactly who she'd be talking to. I'd cancelled my dinner with the event organizer, rushed to change flights, sent her the exact airline, gate, and time. Still, radio silence. The last text I sent hung in the chat like a ghost, landing at 6:30. Can't wait to see you. She never even left me on read. The taxi ride from the airport was a blur. The windows fogged, the driver said something about traffic, I nodded absently. Then Nathan texted me best friend and the only one I trusted enough to ask. James, you back? Yeah, I replied immediately. Nathan, do you know what's going on with Emily? I haven't been able to reach her. I was trying not to spiral, but my mind was already flooding with worst-case scenarios. I hadn't slept in 48 hours. I imagined her unconscious in a hospital, a wreck on the freeway, some horrible accident. Or worse, the kind of betrayal that you don't even have the heart to believe until it's staring you in the face. We'd been together for 5 years, lived together for 2. Emily wasn't perfect, but she respected me. Even when she was upset, she'd let me know if she'd be out late or wanted space. Sometimes she'd even pre-order takeout so I wouldn't go hungry if she had to work overtime. Her sudden vanishing act. Never happened before. I was so close to calling the police, but being out of state, I didn't know the exact details of what I'd be reporting. I didn't want to make a scene if it turned out to be something simple. But what Nathan texted next? That broke something in me. James. I thought you knew. Knew what? My heart sank. About Ryan Kim, he continued. Her childhood friend. The one she used to date. Ryan Kim. I remembered that name. The white moonlight from her past. Her first love. The one she told me about over red wine on our 3rd date. I remember thinking it was brave of her to be so open, to admit she once loved someone so much it almost broke her. I'd been touched by how vulnerable she was. She told me they had been together through high school and college, promised each other forever, until one day Ryan dumped her and married a rich heiress instead. Money over love, classic story. She said it hurt, but she'd moved on. That she'd chosen me. What Nathan said next. I wasn't ready for it. Ryan got into a car accident. Memory loss. And guess what? His memory's frozen at the time when he and Emily were head over heels in love. He thinks they're still together. He doesn't remember the wife, the kid, nothing. I felt like someone kicked me in the chest. The air was there, but I couldn't breathe. So what? I texted back, hands shaking. Emily just. What? Decided to cosplay 2013 and play house with him. Worse, Nathan replied, she brought him home. My brain short-circuited. I was still sitting in the cab, 5 minutes away from our apartment, the one I paid rent for, the one we picked furniture for together. Why? I asked. Why would she bring him to our place? She told people he has no one else. That she's the only one he remembers. That she has to help him recover. My stomach turned. That wasn't help. That was betrayal dressed up as nostalgia. The moment the cab stopped, I threw cash at the driver and rushed up the stairs. I punched in the door code error. Again error. What the hell? I was about to call the landlord when the door opened from the inside. And there he was. Ryan Kim, in a robe, freshly showered, looking exactly like the Instagram-filtered version of every soft boy Emily used to tell me she outgrew. "Hey, bro," he said, blinking like he was surprised. "Emily said you'd be back the day after tomorrow." "Bro." I stared at him, stunned. "Oh, sorry," he chuckled, "when Emily and I used to live together, the door code was my birthday. I guess I forgot it's not anymore." My fists clenched, but I said nothing. From the kitchen, the sound of a soup pot bubbling filled the silence. Emily walked out, wearing a ridiculous bunny print apron, wiping her hands on a towel like she hadn't disappeared off the face of the earth for 3 damn days. "James," she said. "You're back. Why didn't you tell me?" Her tone was accusing, like I'd caught her off guard. "Why didn't I?" I pulled out my phone and shoved it in her face. "Emily, I called you 24 times. Sent over 100 texts. You blocked me. And now you're asking why I didn't give you a heads up." She looked flustered, like she hadn't expected me to call her out. "I was busy," she muttered. "You were busy," I repeated, my voice low and sharp. "Too busy to let your boyfriend know you were bringing your ex into our home." Ryan stepped forward, that fake-ass gentle smile plastered on. "Hey man, don't be mad at her. It's not her fault I needed help." "Shut up," I snapped, finally looking him in the eye. "This is between me and Emily. You don't get a say." But Emily placed herself between us. "Just let it go, James. He's been through a lot. And this really isn't a big deal." "Not a big deal." The place I called home, the life we built together was now being shared with a man who literally replaced me in her mind. I opened the shoe cabinet to swap my boots and stopped. None of my shoes were there. Instead, at least 20 pairs of men's shoes, none of which were mine, lined every shelf. "Oh, sorry," Ryan said, pointing at a trash bag by the door. "Your shoes are in there. I didn't know you'd be back so soon, or we would have gotten you your own rack." He smiled, like that made it okay. I was bending down to dig through the bag when something slammed into my lower back. Hard. I stumbled, crashing face first into the hardwood floor. I gasped, stunned by the sudden pain. "Bad man," a child's voice yelled. I looked up, ink splattering across my face. A kid, maybe 6, was wielding a squirt gun except the liquid inside was jet black. My cream-colored sweater and designer coat were instantly ruined. I lunged instinctively, grabbing for the brat, but Ryan swooped in, hugging the kid protectively. "Don't. That's my son," he cried. "He's just a kid, be mad, James." "I'm sorry. Ethan didn't mean it." The little hellspawn peeked from behind his dad and spit at me. "I'm not saying sorry to a jerk," he shouted. I was shaking. I turned to Emily, expecting her to step in. Instead, she just stood there, staring at the stove like it was the most interesting thing in the world. I took a deep breath and looked at Ryan. "You said I shouldn't take things out on a kid, right?" "Yeah," he said, nodding like we were bros. "Exactly. He doesn't know any better." I smiled. "Cool. But you're not a kid." And without warning, I slapped him across the face. Then again. Harder. He stumbled, and I grabbed his hair, slamming his head against the wall. Hurt head trauma helps memory come back. "That true, Ryan?" I growled. He shrieked, suddenly not so soft anymore. Emily finally rushed in, yelling my name, pulling me away, hugging Ryan like he was the one betrayed. And right there, watching her cradle another man in our living room, I knew I wasn't the one who didn't belong anymore. This wasn't my home. This wasn't my girlfriend. And starting tonight, this wasn't my problem. I didn't say a word after that. Not when Emily tried to justify it, not when Ryan whimpered with that pathetic little smile like he was the one who'd been wronged, not even when that brat Ethan stormed off yelling something about bad men and ruined fun. I just turned around, grabbed my suitcase, and headed to the bedroom we once shared. Or at least, what used to be my bedroom. I opened the door and nearly laughed out loud. My clothes, every last shirt, jacket, sock, and pair of jeans had been pulled out of the closet and dumped on the balcony like they were garbage. Some of them were in plastic tubs, others just crumpled in piles next to the mop and trash bags like someone had casually decided they didn't matter anymore. I scanned the room. Brand new sheets. Different pillows. A perfume scent I didn't recognize, floral and heavy, definitely not Emily's usual. Someone else had been sleeping in this bed. I don't know what pissed me off more, the fact that she thought she could just overwrite me, or the fact that she didn't even bother hiding it. I stared at the closet, now full of neatly arranged men's jackets and cashmere sweaters that weren't mine. Whose room is this? I muttered, even though I knew the answer. My hands were shaking, but I forced them steady as I pulled out my phone and began typing a message to Nathan. Confirmed. She replaced me. Physically, emotionally, spatially. He replied with a single emoji, a sighing face. That pretty much summed it up. I stood there for another minute, then headed back out to the living room. Emily was wiping Ryan's face with a warm towel like he was some wounded puppy, cooing in that soft voice she used to reserve for me when I was sick. I looked at her, really looked at her, and wondered how the hell I hadn't seen this coming. Emily, I said, calmly. I need you to explain what exactly is going on here. She stiffened but didn't turn. What do you mean? I said slowly, why is my closet full of Ryan's crap? Why was my code changed? Why did you block me, ignore me, and let me come home to find this circus? She finally turned, folding her arms like I was the unreasonable one. James, you're overreacting. 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 I nearly laughed. So letting your ex-boyfriend and his kid move into our apartment, kicking me out of my own room, and throwing my stuff outside. That's your definition of normal? You don't understand, she snapped. Ryan lost everything. His wife divorced him after the accident, his parents are overseas, and he only remembers me. I'm the only person he trusts. Then let him trust you somewhere else, I said coldly. Not in my bed, not under my roof. She looked at me, and for a second I thought I saw guilt flash across her face. But it vanished. This is still my home too, she said. I live here. You can't just kick people out like that. You're right, I said. Which is why I won't kick you out. I'll leave. She blinked. You're being dramatic. No, I said, walking toward the balcony to start collecting my clothes, I'm being done. I grabbed an empty suitcase and began stuffing whatever I could find inside. Most of it smelled like mildew or cooking grease. Some had ink stains from that damn kid squirt gun. I wasn't even mad anymore. I was detached. Like watching a scene from someone else's life. As I zipped up the bag, I heard footsteps behind me. You're not seriously leaving, Emily said. What am I supposed to tell Ryan? Tell him the truth, I said, lifting my bag. Tell him you're still stuck in the past, and you let go of the guy who was stupid enough to stay in your present. That's when she snapped. You know what? Fine. Go. But don't expect me to beg you to come back. I never did, I said without turning around. I was halfway to the door when Ryan suddenly appeared, holding Ethan like some kind of shield. Hey man, let's not escalate things, he said, voice trembling. Ethan's upset. Maybe you could apologize. I froze. Then turned around slowly. Apologize. To you. Well, you did hit me, he said, eyes darting to Emily. And Ethan's just a kid. He didn't mean to mess up your clothes. I looked at them. The woman I thought I'd marry. The ex-boyfriend who somehow became the main character in my life story. The kid who drenched me in ink and spat in my face. I exhaled. Then I smiled. You're right, I said. I shouldn't take things out on a kid. Emily sighed in relief. Ryan smiled like he'd just won a round. I turned back to him. But you're not a kid, Ryan. Then I grabbed the nearest pair of his designer shoes from the rack and snapped them in half. These are $900, he gasped. Were. I corrected him. Emily screamed, trying to pull me away. James, stop. You're insane. I shoved open the closet, grabbed another one of his expensive jackets, and ripped it down the middle. You want me out? Fine. But I'm not leaving quietly. That's when she tried to slap me. She actually raised her hand. I caught her wrist mid-air. Don't, I said. You don't get to play the victim here. Her lips trembled. James, please. We were doing fine before this. You're the one ruining everything. I laughed. You ruined it the second you brought your ex into our home and called it kindness. Ryan tried to speak again, but I raised my hand. Don't. Just shut up. You've done enough. I grabbed the rest of my stuff, flung the front door open, and left without another word. As I walked down the hallway, I could hear Ethan crying, Emily yelling, and Ryan trying to calm them both like he was still the hero of some tragic K-drama. I didn't even look back. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time in days, I felt something close to peace. When I stepped onto the street, the snow had turned to sleet. Cold and ugly, like the truth I'd just swallowed. I pulled out my phone and texted Nathan again. You still got a lead on that rental outside the city? He replied in under a minute. Still available. Want me to set it up? Yeah, I typed. Let's start fresh. I paused, then added, also. I've got a story to write. I moved out 3 days later, not with a dramatic exit or teary farewell, but with quiet, calculated movements at 2 a.m. While Emily and her white moonlight were likely tangled up on the living room couch pretending it was 2012 again. I didn't slam the door, didn't leave a note, didn't take revenge, not yet anyway. I simply erased myself from her world piece by piece. Every shirt, every mug I brought home from our vacations, every book I read out loud to her when she couldn't sleep, all gone. The succulents I planted on the windowsill, the coffee machine I bought with my first manuscript payment, even the limited edition vinyl sheet, borrowed and never returned. I took everything that had my name, fingerprint, or memory attached. When the sun rose, I was already sipping coffee in my new place, a modest but peaceful villa with a front porch and a backyard full of wild lavender and a towering old persimmon tree that glowed orange like lanterns against the winter sky. The landlord, Mr. Landon, greeted me with a warm smile and said it used to be his daughter's wedding house before she moved to Washington with her husband. I smiled back and said it was perfect. Meanwhile, I could almost hear Emily waking up in our old apartment, expecting me to cook breakfast or pick up groceries, only to find the room hollow, stripped of anything that had once tied me to her life. And just as she probably gasped in disbelief, her phone buzzed. Not from me but from the landlord. Mr. Landon was reclaiming his apartment. The lease was under my name, and since I'd officially terminated it, she had 30 days to pack up her little fantasy and get out. Not that she waited 30 days. She called me that afternoon, voice high-pitched and indignant, James Walker, where the hell are you? Did you seriously move out without saying a word? I was sitting by the fireplace, laptop open, first draft of my newest novel blinking on the screen. I took a sip of tea and smiled. Yeah, I said. Surprise. You can't just disappear like that. You didn't even discuss it with me. Oh, I replied, voice calm. Kind of like how you brought your ex into our home without discussing it with me. She went quiet. Then, of course, the real reason behind the call surfaced. Mr. Landon says you canceled the lease. Where am I supposed to live now? Not my problem, I said, and hung up. Then I blocked her. Again. She tried calling me from Ryan's number. Blocked that too. Then she tried Nathan, who promptly warned her not to drag him into her drama. The funny thing is, I thought that would be the end of it. I thought she'd pack up, move on, maybe cry for a few days and disappear into the corporate exam grind or some influencer course about healing your inner goddess. But no. She showed up at my gate 3 days later, hair greasy, clothes wrinkled, dragging a suitcase behind her like a scene straight out of some low-budget soap opera. She spotted me through the iron fence, standing under the persimmon tree, pruning branches with a pair of garden shears I just bought from a farmer's market. "James," she screeched. "You bought a house. You told me we didn't have money." I raised an eyebrow. "We didn't." "I do. Big difference." "Did you put my name on the deed?" she demanded, pushing the gate like she owned the place. "Please tell me you at least did that." I stared at her. "Emily, what reality are you living in?" "Oh come on," she whined, shoving her phone through the bars with her Venmo QR code displayed. "Fine, whatever, but at least pay off my credit cards." I maxed them out buying stuff for Ryan and Ethan. "That sounds like a you problem," I replied coolly. "James, seriously," she said, her voice trembling between rage and desperation. "I need help." "No," I said, "what you need is to stop treating me like your fallback plan. This chapter. It's done. You're not even a footnote anymore." She looked stunned, like no man had ever told her no with such finality. I pulled out my phone and held it up. "You've got 10 seconds to leave before I go live and tell TikTok the tragic story of a girl who cheated on her boyfriend and came crawling back like a wet raccoon." She froze, then grabbed her suitcase and staggered off without another word. I'd like to say that was the end. But desperate people don't disappear quietly. Over the next week, she stalked me around town, waited outside cafes I liked, begged me to talk, just one more time. I ignored her. The last straw came when she grabbed my arm outside the bookstore, sobbing about how I was the only man who ever understood her. I called the cops. She got a warning for harassment and was told to back off unless she wanted a restraining order. The officer asked if we were in a relationship. I showed him a video of her and Ryan dry humping on the living room couch. He winced and said, "Yeah, you're good." Still, part of me hoped she'd finally get her life together. But instead, she went full meltdown. She got kicked out of 2 short-term rentals, defaulted on multiple credit cards, and was spotted begging her old college friends for money in group chats I could still see. She didn't know I still had access. That was how I learned she'd started gambling, drinking, and even selling herself. Her once pristine Instagram became a graveyard of deleted photos, pity posts, and blurry stories of expensive cocktails paid for by mystery friends. The final nail in her coffin came when Ryan dumped her in the most brutal way possible. Turns out his wife hadn't really disappeared, she was a distant cousin of Mr. Landon, and when she saw the videos of Ryan cheating, she kicked off the lawsuit of the year. Ryan lost the divorce, lost custody of Ethan, lost his condo, and got banned from his in-laws' family fund. The cherry on top. His ex sent a private investigator after him and found out he'd embezzled money during the marriage. He tried to run. Guess where he ended up? Sold overseas in some dark web organ trafficking ring, thanks to a connection his ex-wife used to have from her shady business school days. And Emily? She was left with nothing. No man. No money. No house. No job. She eventually got diagnosed with stomach cancer late stage. Her mom had to sell their family home just to cover the hospital bills. She tried to reach me one last time before she died. Through Nathan. Through mutual friends. I never answered. I don't regret it. Some people aren't meant to be saved. They're meant to be forgotten. And me? I published my novel. It sold. It got optioned for a drama series. I signed with an agency. I moved forward. And sometimes, when I look at that old persimmon tree in my yard and watch the orange fruits glow like embers against the frost, I smile and remind myself, not all scars are ugly. Some are proof that I survived someone who tried to kill me emotionally. Emily Carter. She was my biggest mistake and my greatest plot twist. End of story. Not quite. Because the next chapter. It's all about me. You know what's funny? After everything Emily did after the betrayal, the lies, the silent treatment while she played house with her ex and his demon spawn, she still had the audacity to act like I was the one who owed her something. Even when she was broke, blacklisted from the civil service exam for her little sex tape scandal, and officially ghosted by Ryan, she thought she could crawl back into my life like some tragic heroine begging for redemption. But what she didn't realize was that I had already buried that version of her in my head. I didn't hate her. You don't hate a storm that already passed. You just rebuild and get stronger, and maybe occasionally laugh when you hear it try to come back. A week after the restraining order warning, she showed up again, this time waiting outside the local coffee shop I liked to write at, hair curled, makeup caked on like she was starring in a community theater version of The Woman Who Lost Everything. I walked right past her. She grabbed my sleeve. "James, please," she said. "Just 5 minutes." I shook her off like a mosquito. I don't talk to strangers. Her eyes welled up instantly. She always had that weapon ready. The tears. The quiver in the voice. The damsel in distress look that used to turn me into a fool. But not anymore. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "I made a mistake." I turned slowly, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "Which one?" She blinked. "What? Which mistake are you apologizing for?" I said flatly. "Letting your ex into our home. Letting his kid spit in my face. Ignoring my calls while you played nursemaid to a man who dumped you for money. Or was it when you asked me to pay for it all like some kind of sugar daddy with no dignity?" "James, don't be cruel," she snapped. "I was going through a lot. And I was going through a relationship," I said. "Alone, apparently." She stepped back like I'd slapped her. Good. I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to feel the absence of my love like a crater beneath her feet. She didn't say another word after that. Just turned around and walked away like a ghost who knew it no longer haunted anything. After that, she faded from my daily life completely. But not from the news. Turns out Ryan's wife Vanessa Landon, Mr. Landon's niece, was the type to let things slide. The lawsuit was brutal. She dragged Ryan through the legal meat grinder, exposed every one of his dirty secrets, the embezzlement, the fake amnesia, even the recordings from their marriage therapy where he admitted to feeling bored with her after she lost part of her leg in a racing accident. The court ruled in her favor. Ryan lost everything. Custody, assets, even his social media accounts. Then came the real kicker. Vanessa pulled a favor with some very shady contacts and had Ryan deported to a country that didn't exactly treat foreign scam artists nicely. Rumor had it, he ended up in some underground organ trade ring, sold off piece by piece like the leech he was. Emily. She barely made it out of the wreckage. Without Ryan's fake fairy tale and without me as her safety net, she was left with nothing but unpaid credit cards, overdue rent notices, and a trail of burned bridges so long it could have been used as a tourist map of shame. She tried applying for jobs but was blacklisted. The Civil Service Board had flagged her for misconduct. Her mug was floating around WeTube on reaction videos titled things like, "When Your White Moonlight Turns into a Walking Red Flag." At first, I laughed. It felt good. Justice porn, basically. But then the updates got darker. She started posting cryptic messages about karma and loneliness. Friends said she was drinking too much. One of our old classmates saw her working in a seedy bar outside the city, wearing the same kind of expressionless smile you'd see on mannequins in clearance outlets. Still, I stayed silent. I didn't reach out. Didn't offer pity. Didn't send her money, flowers, or closure. Because she didn't deserve closure, she deserved the echo chamber of her own consequences. And I kept writing. I finished my second novel, landed a publishing deal that came with a Netflix pitch meeting. My editor said the pain made the prose raw and real. I said thanks and sent her a screenshot of Emily's last begging message, "If I die tomorrow, would you finally talk to me?" I never replied. But I kept it. Not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of who I was before, and who I refused to be again. 2 years passed. My show got picked up, and my bank account finally had enough zeros to shut up every relative who once asked me when I'd get a real job. I bought a second house bigger, brighter, and on a hill with a view. Sometimes I'd sit on the balcony, sipping coffee, thinking about how I almost gave it all up for a woman who chose a conman with a spray tan and a fake sob story. Then one day, Nathan called. "Did you hear?" he asked, voice a little shaky. "Emily passed." I didn't respond immediately. He let the silence hang. Stomach cancer. Refused treatment near the end. Her mom sold the family house to cover the bills. She spent her final days alone. "She tried to see you." "I know," I said. I said no. Nathan was quiet for a moment, then he sighed. "You did the right thing, man. Just thought you'd want to know." I thanked him and hung up. And for a long time, I sat there. Not sad. Not relieved. Just still. Emily Carter was officially gone. And with her, the last thread connecting me to the worst chapter of my life. I walked into my study, opened my next manuscript, and deleted every sentence that sounded like regret. Because I had none. Regret is for people who believe in second chances. Me. I believe in evolution. Emily chose to stay in a memory. I chose to live. And that, more than anything, is what separates the ones who fall from the ones who rise. Let the record show, she was a lesson. And I was the one who finally learned. The thing about moving on is no one ever tells you how quiet it gets, how peaceful the silence feels when you finally stop expecting someone to text back, to explain, to apologize. I used to think closure came from big, dramatic moments, the "I'm sorry" the "I was wrong" the cinematic confessions, but in reality, closure sometimes looks like watching the sunrise in a house no one else knows the address of, drinking coffee that only you brewed, surrounded by furniture you picked for yourself. After Emily died, I didn't post anything. No tribute, no cryptic quote, no throwback photo captioned "R.I.P. to someone I used to know." Because she wasn't someone I used to know. She was someone I outgrew. A part of me once, sure, but like a cast on a broken limb, only useful when I was still healing. Once I could walk again, she just became something heavy I needed to shed. I wasn't heartless. I did think about her briefly. But mostly in the way you think about old scars when the weather changes. A twitch. A ghost of a pain that no longer defines you. And then came the emails. Production houses. Publishers. Screenwriters. Everyone wanted to adapt my story. The fictionalized version, of course, the one I told through my second novel, where I changed names, locations, softened the ugliest truths just enough to be palatable. But the anger, the betrayal, the spiral, and the comeback. That was all real. Too real. The offers rolled in. I said no to the first 5. Then Netflix called again. This time with numbers. Big numbers. I forwarded the contract to Nathan and said, "Tell me this doesn't feel like poetic justice." He replied, "This feels like karma in Prada." So I signed. And suddenly, I wasn't just a writer, I was the man behind the story everyone wanted to binge. The ex-boyfriend turned protagonist. The guy who got cheated on, left with nothing, and rose like a phoenix wrapped in sarcasm and success. I wasn't famous exactly, but I wasn't anonymous anymore either. People started recognizing me in grocery stores. Asking if I was James Walker from Forget Her First. I'd nod and smile, sometimes pose for a selfie, always polite. None of them knew that behind the cool demeanor was a guy who once stood in his own kitchen covered in ink from a kid who wasn't his, watching the woman he loved flirt with a man who had literally dumped her years ago and somehow still won. None of them knew how close I came to giving up. But that was the beauty of storytelling. I got to shape the ending. I got to decide who came out stronger. I even wrote a line into the script that made it into the trailer. He forgot everything but her. I remembered everything but chose to forget her. It blew up. Went viral. Memes. Edits. TikToks. Suddenly, my heartbreak wasn't just mine, it was cultural currency. People cried for me, raged for me, celebrated my win like it was theirs too. But somewhere in the middle of that media frenzy, I got an invitation. From Mr. Landon. The same landlord who once handed me the keys to that quiet little villa with the persimmon tree. "Come by for lunch," he said, "meet the baby." Turns out Vanessa had given birth again a little girl this time. The kid looked nothing like Ryan, thank God. When I arrived, Mr. Landon greeted me like a long-lost son. "James," he said, "I always knew you'd turn this mess into something great." I laughed and shrugged. Mess makes good plot. He poured us tea. We sat on the porch, and eventually, he brought up Ryan. "He's gone," he said quietly. "No records. No news. No body." I raised an eyebrow. "Gone as in vanished?" "Vanished," he confirmed. Vanessa's people said he was sent to a private clinic overseas. Some hush-hush rehab thing. But no one's seen him since. I wasn't surprised. That man lived his life like a bad subplot, sloppy, short-sighted, and easy to forget. Mr. Landon looked at me for a long moment, then asked, "Do you hate them?" "Emily. Ryan. All of it." I took a breath. Let the wind rustle the leaves before I answered. "I don't hate them," I said. Hate would mean they still had power. I just don't think about them. Not really. I remember, but I don't carry it. He nodded. "That's healthy. That's healing," I corrected. He raised his teacup in a toast. To letting go. I clinked mine with his. To never letting them back in. That night, back at my place, I sat at my desk and started outlining my third book. Not another revenge arc. Not another heartbreak saga. Something softer. Gentler. Maybe about finding love again. Or learning how to trust yourself before you trust anyone else. Because here's the thing no one tells you: after you survive a disaster of a relationship, you don't just get over the person. You get over the version of you that accepted less than you deserved. That version of me? He's dead and buried, with Emily Carter as the last ghost he ever chased. The me sitting here now? He's sharper. Wiser. Still a little sarcastic, still too into overpriced espresso, but grounded in a way I never thought I'd be. And that? That's the plot twist no one saw coming. Not even me. I used to think endings were explosions, loud, cinematic, unforgettable. But now I know most endings slip in like fog at dawn, quiet, soft, unnoticed until the world looks different and you realize the chapter is already closed. The final scene doesn't always come with fireworks, sometimes it's just a quiet Sunday morning, the smell of fresh coffee, and the realization that your heart hasn't thought about someone in weeks. And that's how I knew I'd made it out. It wasn't the Netflix deal or the book sales or the moments when strangers stopped me to say they cried watching the show. It was that exact moment I woke up, made eggs, watered the persimmon tree, and didn't think of her at all. That used to be impossible. Emily Carter had been an earthquake in my life. She cracked my foundations, shook everything I thought I knew about loyalty, love, and what it meant to matter. But now? Now she was just a name in a closed file, a glitch in a timeline I'd already rewritten. Sometimes I wonder what her last days were really like. People say she got quiet near the end, stopped fighting, stopped calling, stopped asking to see me. Her mom said she'd stare at the ceiling and mumble old memories, fragments of conversations we once had. I didn't go to the funeral. I wasn't invited, but even if I had been, I wouldn't have gone. Not out of pettiness, but because funerals are for closure, and I'd already buried her years ago. That part of my life had ended the moment she chose nostalgia over reality, chose comfort over commitment, chose Ryan over me. And now, here I was, standing in a house built with my own hands, surrounded by quiet, not loneliness. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. There was a woman I met recently. Her name's Claire. I won't make this about her, not yet, because some things are too new, too precious to share. But she laughs with her whole face and doesn't flinch when I mention my past. When I told her the whole story, yes, the unfiltered version, not the polished one with renamed characters, she didn't pity me. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Sounds like she did you a favor." And damn if she wasn't right. Sometimes losing someone is the best thing they'll ever do for you. Claire's not a replacement or a rebound. She's just herself. Kind. Curious. She doesn't ask me to forget anything. She just reminds me there's more to remember. The other night, we were sitting under the persimmon tree, and she asked, "What would you say to her, if you could go back?" I thought about it. Not out of longing, but out of curiosity. What would I say to Emily Carter, if she stood in front of me now, not as a ghost or a regret, but just as a person? I took a sip of wine and said, "I'd say thank you." Claire tilted her head. "Really?" "Yeah," I said. "Thank you for showing me what love isn't. Thank you for waking me up. Thank you for leaving, because I never would have found any of this if you hadn't." She smiled and rested her head on my shoulder. The wind rustled the leaves, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of a neighbor's wind chime carried through the night. Peace. That was what I felt. Not revenge. Not justice. Just peace. That's the ending I didn't know I needed. Not a mic drop. Not a courtroom win. Just the quiet realization that I'm okay now. Better, even. That the boy who once begged for a reply now doesn't wait for anything. That the man who once stood trembling in his own apartment now opens his door with pride, with power, with a future. I check my calendar, another book deadline coming up, a podcast interview next week, a dinner with Claire's parents next Friday. Life is full. Not perfect, but full. And for the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. The past tried to take me down. It came with betrayal and heartbreak, ink stains and cold shoulders, slammed doors and gaslighting apologies. But I'm still here. Not just standing thriving. I used to want closure. Now I want continuity. I used to want her to say sorry. Now I want to never need one again. This isn't about her anymore. It's about me. My story. My rebuild. My damn peace. So if you're still here reading, still scrolling through my life like it's some long-ass Twitter thread full of drama and redemption arcs, let me give you one last update. I made it. I made it out, and I'm never going back. Because healing isn't loud. It's a choice you make every morning. It's drinking your own damn coffee, kissing someone who deserves your lips, writing pages you don't rip out. It's knowing you were worth more the whole time and finally acting like it. Emily Carter is gone. Ryan Kim is gone. The boy I used to be is gone. But me? The real me? I'm just getting started. So here's to the ending that turned into a beginning. Here's to surviving the storm and planting something that actually grows. Here's to the persimmon tree, still standing. Just like me.